All right, good afternoon. We had a guest lined up for today, Demor Sornu, who is the Director of Operations at OCHA, but given everything that is going on, we've postponed it till next week. She was here to speak to you about Haiti, but we will get her back next week. As a reminder, tomorrow is an official UN holiday in observance of Good Friday. The headquarters is scheduled to be closed. However, sometimes the Security Council forces us to be open. So stay tuned. I don't know. So we will stay tuned anyway. Earlier this morning, the Secretary General spoke to you on the onset of the second month of the Middle East crisis and warned that we are on the edge of a wider war that would engulf the whole Middle East with dramatic impacts around the globe. He said that when the Strait of Hormuz is strangled, the world's poorest and most vulnerable cannot breathe. The spiral of death and destruction must stop, Mr. Guterres said, and diplomatic efforts must deserve the space and support to succeed, anchored firmly in international law, including the Charter of these United Nations. He said he remains in close contact with the parties and is dispatching his personal envoy, Jean Arnaud, to the region to support these efforts. Once again, he told the United States and Israel that it is high time to stop the war and told Iran to stop attacking its neighbors. And I can add that Jean Arnaud is finalizing arrangements to travel to the region. He will visit countries affected by the conflict and meet with authorities there. He also plans to meet with facilitators of the diplomatic track to discuss the ways and means for the United Nations to contribute to efforts to bring about a comprehensive and durable settlement to this conflict. We'll obviously keep you updated of his activities as we are able to share them with you. Earlier today in Lebanon, in Beirut, there was a solemn ceremony that took place at the Beirut's International Airport to pay tribute to our three fallen peacekeepers from UNIFIL. And as you will remember, there are Corporal Faisal Ramadan, Major Zulmi Iskandar, and First Sergeant Mohammed Nur Ikhwan. All are from the Indonesian Armed Forces. And they lost their lives in two incidents, one on March 29th and another one on March 30th. And they lost their lives while bravely implementing their mandates and peacekeeping duties as part of UNIFIL. The three peacekeepers were posthumously awarded the UNIFIL and Lebanese Armed Forces medals in recognition of their dedicated service to UNIFIL's mission in South Lebanon. Meanwhile, the picture on the ground remains concerning and bleak. UNIFIL reports continuing rocket fire towards Israel and airstrikes and artillery shelling impacting several locations in southern Lebanon coming from Israel. The Israeli Defense Forces have expanded their incursions into area towards the west, with tank and clashes seen in areas in Sector West, located about 12 kilometers north of the Blue Line. The hostilities continue to endanger the peacekeepers. This morning, one peacekeeper was wounded in the shoulder by a bullet at a UN position near Mace Jebel in Sector East. UNIFIL immediately issued a stop fire request. The peacekeepers received treatment at the position's own medical facility. The falling bullet likely originated from clashes between Hezbollah and Israeli Defense Forces in that area. Meanwhile, in separate incidents, the peacekeepers demanded the Israeli Defense Forces remove an Israeli flag that they have erected near a UN position in Kafr Kela, that is in Sector East. As you can imagine, the flag undermines the perception of UNIFIL's impartiality and risks drawing fire towards peacekeepers amid the ongoing clashes that we are seeing. We remind again of all of their obligations to avoid any action that could put the lives of peacekeepers at further risk. On the humanitarian front, colleagues on the ground in Lebanon say that 1 month since the start of the ongoing escalation in the country, the humanitarian situation continues to deteriorate at an alarming speed. More than 1.1 million people have now been forced from their homes, having to flee their homes sometimes more than once. Displacement orders from the Israelis continue to impact newer areas. In 1 month, nearly 15% 15% of Lebanon's territory has been impacted by displacement orders issued by Israel. While many have fled, finding refuge in shelters with relatives or informal settlements, others are remaining and urgently need assistance. Hospitals are struggling to keep up. Half of the facilities that are supported by the UN Population Fund in areas impacted directly by the conflict have been forced to close due to the violence. Many healthcare workers themselves have been forced to move. Hospitals and primary healthcare centers are overwhelmed and they are understaffed. Our partners working in health are working to maintain essential services. UNFPA has deployed 9 mobile health units across Lebanon to provide maternal care and emergency obstetric support in collective shelters. Services also include care for survivors of sexual violence, psychosocial support, and the distribution of dignity kits and essential supplies for pregnant women and new mothers. However, the response is facing growing constraints. Disruptions to major global transport routes are delaying the delivery of critical assistance to those who need it the most. Our partners are also working to reroute shipments and secure alternative supply lines, but gaps remain at a time when needs are rapidly increasing. As the situation worsens, our calls to the international community remains the same: an immediate de-escalation of hostilities, the protection of civilians, the protection of healthcare centers, the protection of humanitarian workers, and the full and unimpeded humanitarian access, especially to the south of Lebanon, and urgent funding for us to be able to respond to the fast-growing needs at the pace that is needed. Turning to the occupied Palestinian territory, and I'll start first with Gaza and then move on to the West Bank. Our OCHA colleagues say that people's needs in Gaza continue to far exceed what aid organization can provide amid severe restrictions and other impediments. This underscores the urgent need for authorities to facilitate the work of our humanitarian partners and allow for a wider range of critical items to enter the Gaza Strip through available crossings. Unfortunately, as you know, only one crossing is open to cargo at this point. On food security, we and our partners have completed distribution for March this week, reaching every other family with rations covering half of the minimum caloric requirements. Our partners are also serving nearly 1.5 meals and producing about 130,000 2-kilogram bread bundles every single day. But this is far from enough. The limited entry of commercial goods, particularly cooking gas, continues to constrain what kitchens and families can prepare. Nearly 1 in 2 households still relies on unsafe cooking methods, including the burning of trash. On health, our UN-supported emergency medical teams provided about 23,000 consultations in the last week of March alone. That was throughout Gaza. But persistent delays in clearing specialized medical and surgical equipment continues to limit the ability for us to provide complex health care. On shelter, most people remain displaced, and the response is still limited to short-term solutions. More durable shelter support depends on the entry of equipment and materials that are not easily approved, including those needed to clear debris and explosive ordnance or to fix damaged homes. During the last week of March, our partners reached nearly 14,000 families with assistance, including tarpaulins and household items, prioritizing people whose belongings were flooded by the recent rainstorm. On the education front, our partners tell us that last week, rains damaged at least 15 temporary learning spaces, disrupting services to some 20,000 students. Led by UNICEF, education partners continue setting up specialized tents for learning and distributing stationery and recreational items for children. In the West Bank, OCHA casualty figures for the first 3 months of this year indicate that 2 out of every 3 Palestinian fatalities occurring in the regional escalation on February 28th. In other words, 22 of 33 Palestinians killed by Israeli forces or settlers. In addition, you'll recall that 4 other Palestinians, all women, were killed in the West Bank by falling munitions during an Iranian missile attack. More than 200 settler attacks caused casualties or property damage in March, impacting over 100 Palestinian communities. That is about 6 attacks a day. We and our partners continue to support the health system in the West Bank, as well as families who've been displaced or otherwise affected. But to prevent further violence and reduce people's needs over time, Palestinians must be protected. Perpetrators must be held to account for these unlawful attacks, and policies driving such needs must be reversed. I have a rather long and grim update for you from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Our humanitarian colleagues warn that the humanitarian situation continues to deteriorate there due to continuing violence in the eastern provinces of Ituri, North Kivu, and South Kivu. In the Ituri province alone, our humanitarian colleagues note that at least 30 people were reportedly killed yesterday in armed attacks in the locality of Bafuakoa, that was in Mombasa territory, bringing the number of civilians killed there to more than 100 since March 11th. Local humanitarian partners are also reporting more than 390 people have been abducted in the same period alone. The violence has triggered a new wave of displacement, adding more than 50,000 people already displaced in their territory. Our partners also tell us that there's been widespread looting, including food, medicines, and medical supplies from health facilities. 9 health facilities in Mombasa territory have suspended operations also since March 11th. That has, of course, severely limited access to health care for more than 55,000 human beings. And these people are already underserved to start with. In South Kivu, local sources report that at least 20 civilians have been killed and around 10 others injured in clashes since March 23rd in the territory of Uvira. Also in territories of Kalche and Mwenga. Homes and livestock have been damaged, forcing families to flee. Humanitarian needs are rising, particularly access to food, health care remains limited. In neighboring North Kivu, continued fighting in Masisi territory displaced about 6,000 people between March 28th and the 29th, adding then more than 180,000 people already displaced there. Despite the insecurity, our partners continue to provide assistance where they can. Between March 16th and 27th, more than 30,000 people received food assistance in Mweso town in Masisi. OCHA urges all armed groups to respect international humanitarian law, to protect civilians and civilian infrastructure, and to facilitate safe and unhindered humanitarian access. The humanitarian response plan for the Democratic Republic of the Congo remains critically underfunded. Sadly, no surprise there. The $1.4 billion humanitarian appeal is only 30% funded, with just over $421 million received so far. As needs grow, the response needs more funding, more cash. And in South Sudan, amid the difficult news that we're seeing globally, there is some hopeful developments to note. Our mission, peacekeeping mission there, reports that Upper Nile State Indian peacekeepers from the engineering unit have successfully reopened a key section of the Malakal-Renk main supply route, which has been closed since last year's floods. The new road alignment, which entails reclaiming land from floodwaters to restore the road, will provide safer access, significantly improving mobility in the area and facilitating the delivery of humanitarian assistance to people in need in local communities. These efforts underscore the vital role that peacekeeping missions play in supporting stability and enabling critical assistance to reach vulnerable civilians, some of the most challenging environments. Back here, Halek Kyari, our Assistant Secretary General for Peace Building and Political Affairs, briefed the Security Council on its first ever consideration of cooperation between the United Nations and the Gulf Cooperation Council. He said amid heightened regional tensions, partnership with regional and sub-regional organizations such as the GCC is vital in advancing peace, security, and stability. Mr. Kyari also welcomed the GCC's engagement on key issues in the Middle East, including the occupied Palestinian territory, Sudan, Yemen, Lebanon, and Syria. And I want to flag this afternoon, the Council will reconvene for a briefing on cooperation between the United Nations and the League of Arab States. Mr. Kyari will brief again, and also briefing will be the Secretary General of the League of Arab States, Mr. Abu Ghait. just to read into the record a statement we issued yesterday in which the Secretary General said he was deeply saddened to learn of the passing of Stephen Lewis, a tireless humanitarian and diplomat and steadfast champion of the values of the UN. He was not only a diplomat, but also an activist at heart, relentless in pressing the world to confront justice and act. As the Secretary General's Special Envoy for HIV/AIDS in Africa, he refused to allow this crisis to be discussed in abstract terms, demanding action measured in lives saved, not in words spoken. And his deep engagement with the African continent endured throughout his life, including in recent years, where he continues to speak out for equitable access to health interventions and support for affected communities. Our Peacebuilding Fund has approved $2.5 million for an initiative in Guinea-Bissau to strengthen anti-corruption efforts. The initiative will address systematic corruption by building the capacity of oversight and audit institutions, by building advancing digital solutions and reinforcing partnerships with national stakeholders at national and local level. The Peacebuilding Initiative, to be implemented by the UN Development Program and the Office on Drugs and Crime, will prioritize strengthening civilian institutions, civil society, justice and accountability, mechanisms at the community level for continued peace-building impact. It builds on past UN investments in the country in those areas. Today is World Autism Day. We celebrate talents and contributions of autistic people who enrich our world. The Secretary General called for a renewed commitment to inclusion and embracing diversity. On Saturday, we will mark the International Day for Mine Awareness and Assistance in Mine Action. In his message, the Secretary General calls on member states to adhere to relevant instruments, including the Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention, and urges all those who've recently withdrawn to rejoin. And on Sunday, it's the International Day of Conscience, a day that highlights the need to uphold the values of peace, tolerance, and solidarity and act with conscience to a more sustainable world. Chris, you ready? We have a quiz. This country's most popular sport is cricket. All right? No. Oh, just wait. Just wait. There are only 12 countries in the world that have achieved test status. This is one of them. It achieved test status in 2000. It is currently ranked 9th in the world, according to the International Cricket Council. The one day that Mr. Iftikhar is not online. Okay, it is known as the Tigers. Who said Bangladesh? There we go. We thank our friends in Dhaka for their full payment in full to the regular budget. We're now up to 98. They paid $317,897. We thank them for every one of those dollars. If you have a question, you may ask it or you may yield. Okay. Ephraim, then Stefano.
Thank you, Steph.
Sorry, that's the boss.
I know the Secretary General doesn't comment on the work of the Security Council, but today he highlighted Resolution 2817, which condemned Iran's attack on the GCC. Also, in your briefing just now, you emphasized clearly the disruption caused by major global transport routes and the impediments it's causing for delivery of aid. This comes at a time when the Security Council is about to vote on yet a new resolution to protect the Strait of Hormuz and calling on international community to use all the tools necessary to ensure the freedom of navigation and security, maritime security. Does the Secretary General see any worth for the resolution, the need for it? Any word on it?
I think you kind of answered my question in your preamble. We're not going to get in the midst of a discussion on a resolution that is being looked at very carefully right now by member states, where we know there are some divergent views. It is always useful when the Council speaks with one voice. And the Secretary General's position is that the freedom of navigation must be restored in accordance with international law in the Strait of Hormuz for all the reasons that he listed this morning. Mr. Vacara.
Thank you, Stéphane. Today we found out about that the Secretary General was going to deliver his remarks to the press about 40 minutes before. That is unusual, 40 minutes. But my question is, did they decide to do the speech they did after or before President Trump's speech last night?
No, it was, he had to be completely transparent. He had wanted to speak today. We weren't sure, we only confirmed it this morning, but it should not be interpreted as a reaction. The Secretary General said what he had to say, and I can tell you that the text was prepared in advance of what was said of the White House yesterday.
Okay, so any reaction of President Trump's speech?
I mean,
there was something that he was looking for, they didn't find anything?
Well, listen, I will leave you to analyze it. I think the Secretary General has been very consistent in his position on this conflict, and I will leave it to your pen, or votre plume, as we would say in French, to do the compare and contrast. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Steph. Just two logistical questions for you. First, Pakistan's foreign ministry has noted that Islamabad is prepared to host direct U.S. and Iran negotiations. While it's not confirmed, is the UN postured to send a representative or any high-level delegation?
We have nothing to share with you at this point, but I can tell you the Secretary General has been very clear that he will support all efforts, especially coordinated efforts, to bring an end to this conflict in line with international law and the Charter.
And then just a second question, if I may, also on meetings. Today, the United Kingdom led a coalition of 40 countries which convened virtually to address solutions on reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Can you confirm if any...
Sorry, say again?
The UK led a coalition of 40 countries who convened today virtually to address solutions on reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Could you confirm if any UN officials...
No, there was no, not that I know of. We will check. We'll double check, but not that I know of.
Thank you.
At least no one traveled from New York, and there was no Secretariat representative. Abdelhamid.
Thank you, Stéphane. The rate of unemployment in the West Bank now stands at 28.6, worse than Sudan and Iraq. Do you have any comment on that?
Well, we're seeing we are seeing the continued impact of the harassment of Palestinian communities, and as we know, it has a physical and economic impact.
A second question, the Special Rapporteur on Torture issued a statement commenting on that Israeli law to execute Palestinian prisoners, and she said that should be annulled because it won't happen before they go through torture. So do you agree with her assessment?
As you know, it's not for us to agree or disagree with special rapporteurs. I think the Secretary General's position on that law has been explained a number of times from this podium, and we are against it, to be clear. Zara, I think you're online. Do you have a question?
Hi, Yusuf. 1 month after the attacks on Iran began, the President of the United States has repeated his threats last night, stating that we will bring Iran back to the Stone Age. These threats indication an intent to commit war crimes under international humanitarian law and Rome Statute. What is the UN Secretary General response on this?
Well, I think the Secretary General has consistently expressed his concern, and not only the increased military action and the drums of war beating even harder, but also the increased rhetoric, which is all too often dehumanizing, which we firmly stand against in all cases.
Thank you.
One second. Yes. No, 1 second.
Thank you, Stéphane. Yesterday, U.S. Ambassador Bartos, who is in the U.S. representative for UN reform told reporters that the U.S. has paid $159 million towards its regular budget for 2026. Is that something you
There was a payment a while
confirm?
ago. There was a payment a while ago. Let me check if any new money has come in.
Is there any talks with the U.S. about the rest of their budget?
There always are discussions with the United States on issues of money. Yep.
Can I have my follow-up?
Yeah, please.
Question on that, what President Trump said, we will bring them back to the Stone Age. And he added a very racist comment when he said, where they belong. Okay, I mean, crossing 2,500 of Iranian civilization, that I think, do you agree that this is a racist comment?
I mean, I think I just answered the question about the dehumanizing language that we stand against. Sorry, Alex, and then we'll go back to Sarah.
Thanks, Steph. A quick follow-up on the U.S. payment. Are you talking about 160 million that the U.S. has paid, or and something else?
I mean, you should ask your colleague.
You
Yeah,
said
no,
it paid a
I
while
know there
ago.
was money that came in a
Yeah,
few
so
months
that's
ago.
160
And
million.
yes, and I need to check if what Ambassador Bartos talking about was that or new money.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Vaccaro.
Yeah, is that a follow-up on the question that was asked before? This, what President Trump said, that's that phrase, the Stone Age. Did the Secretary General, in listening this phrase, thought that he was basically threatening to use atomic weapons?
You'd have to ask the person who said those words what he meant.
No,
Okay.
my question is
No,
not
I know what you're asking, and I'm answering my limited capacity. Okay. Yes, Pan.
Thank you, Steph. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said today that UN Security Council actions must not provide legal cover for unauthorized military operations, nor should they heighten tensions or escalate conflict. So does SG agree with the viewpoints expressed by
I mean,
the
I
Foreign
think,
Minister?
as I said to Ephraim, we're not going to get into the commenting on ongoing negotiations. We obviously, as you can imagine, stand for a return to peace and not an increased conflict. Okay, thank you all. Sorry,
Very quick, I'm sorry.
not that I'm eager to leave or anything, Sinan, but go ahead.
Yeah, I was late. Maybe somebody asked. According to some reports, a journalist was kidnapped in Baghdad 2 days ago. And I have a question is like, either it can be a group, it can be a person, it can be government. What's Secretary General's message to all these governments groups regarding the journalist safety, like
journalists
kidnapping, detaining?
Journalists need to be able to do their work freely without fear of harassment, arrest, kidnapping, or even worse. And I have no doubt that the Iraqi authorities in Baghdad are doing whatever they can to ensure the release of the reporter. Thank you.